many strange and violent legends of the north of England, few have endured as long or as stubbornly as the story of the Lambton Worm. It is a tale that has been told and retold for centuries, passed down through generations in the villages along the River Wear. Like many old stories, it has been shaped by time, by fear, and by the need to explain the unexplainable. The events are said to have begun in the early 15th century on the lands of the Lambton family in what is now County Durham. The young heir to the estate, John Lambton, was by all accounts a reckless and irresponsible young man. He showed little interest in the duties of his position and spent much of his time hunting, drinking, and avoiding the responsibilities expected of him. One Sunday morning, while the rest of his household attended church, John took his fishing rod and went down to the River Wear. It was a quiet morning, the river running slow and dark between the banks. He cast his line and waited. What he eventually pulled from the water was not a fish in any ordinary sense. The creature was small, no longer than his forearm, and shaped something like an eel. Its skin had a strange, dull metallic quality, and it moved in a way that felt unnatural even in John's hands. It had no visible eyes, and when he tried to hold it still, it twisted with a strength that seemed far greater than its size should have allowed. Repulsed, John threw the thing down an old, disused well near the riverbank and walked away, thinking nothing more of it. For 7 years, nothing happened. Then the animals began to disappear. At first, it was livestock taken from the fields at night, sheep, cattle, even horses. The remains that were eventually found were unlike anything the local people had seen before. The bodies were crushed, as if squeezed by something immense and partially consumed. Some of the carcasses had been dragged for long distances, leaving deep gouges in the earth. The people of the surrounding villages began to speak of a great worm, a massive, serpentine creature that had emerged from the Lambton estate. They said it would leave the old well at night and hunt across the land. It would coil itself around trees and rocks, using its body to crush its prey. Some claimed it had learned to cross the river by forming its body into a great loop. Fear spread quickly. Many began leaving offerings of milk and livestock outside their doors at night, hoping the creature would take what was given and leave them in peace. By the time John Lambton returned from fighting in the Crusades, the worm had become a local terror. His family's lands were suffering, and the people who lived on them were afraid. John knew, even then, that he was responsible. The thing in the well had been his doing, whether he had understood it at the time or not. He sought out a local wise woman, an old woman, who lived alone on the edge of the estate. She listened to his story without surprise. She told him that the worm could only be killed by a man wearing a suit of armor covered in sharp blades. She also warned him that if he succeeded in killing the creature, he must immediately kill the first living thing he saw afterwards. If he failed to do so, a curse would fall upon the Lambton family that would last for 9 generations. John had a suit of armor specially made. Along the arms, legs, and torso, blades were fixed so that anything that coiled around him would be cut apart. He stood in the shallow water of the river where the worm was known to come and drink. When the creature attacked, he allowed it to wrap itself around his body. As it tightened, the blade sank deep into its flesh. When it tried to escape by uncoiling, it tore itself open on the armor. By the end, the river was dark with the worm's blood. and the creature was dead. John had kept his promise to kill the worm, but he could not bring himself to keep the second part of the bargain. When he returned to his father's house, the first living thing he saw was his father's favorite hunting dog, which ran out to greet him. John could not kill it. Later that night, he took the dog into the woods and did what had to be done, hoping it would be enough to break the curse. It was not. For 9 generations, the Lambton family was plagued by misfortune. Some members died young. Others suffered illness, financial ruin, or violent deaths. Entire branches of the family line died out. Whether this was truly the result of a curse or simply the weight of an old and heavy story remains impossible to say with certainty. What interests me is not the curse itself, but the well. In the course of these investigations, I have come to recognize certain patterns. A person disturbs something in water or in the earth. They discard it without understanding what they have found. It is left in darkness. Over time, it changes, it grows. Eventually, it emerges into our world in a form that does not belong here. The well on the Lambton estate was never simply a well. It was a fracture, a thin place, where the boundary between this reality and another had worn weak. The creature John pulled from the river had come through that boundary. The well became its place of transformation. Over 7 years, it fed on whatever fell into that darkness. It grew stronger, and when it was ready, it broke through. This is not an isolated incident. We have seen similar patterns elsewhere. Wells, pits, caves, and old mines have all appeared in these files as places where something unwanted has entered our world. The earth, in certain locations, is not as solid as we like to believe. The Foundation has records relating to the Lambton Worm. They are incomplete and heavily redacted, but they exist. At some point, someone within that organization decided this story was worth preserving and monitoring. That decision alone suggests they understood, even then, that this was more than a local legend. The Lambton Worm was not a monster born of this world. It was an intruder, something that did not belong here, trying to survive in an environment that was never meant for it. And like many intruders, it was eventually destroyed. But the fracture remained, and fractures, once opened, have a tendency to stay open. I have often wondered what would have happened if John Lambton had understood what he had pulled from the river that morning. If he had recognized it for what it was, rather than simply throwing it away, would the outcome have been different? Or was the fracture already too deep, the thing already too determined to cross? These are questions the old stories do not answer. They record what happened, not why. They speak of curses and worms and men in armor, but they do not speak of fractures or of the things that move beneath the surface of the world. That is what we are here to do. This is Adam Mercer, Black Files, Case 021A. The investigation continues.